Tomorrow on Today, the final flight of the Concorde, and this lucky couple won seats. Watch live as they fly into aviation history, only on Today on NBC.
On court, not in court. Kobe Bryant gets a rousing welcome in his first preseason game. End of an era. There it is. The Concorde makes its final flight this morning.
Good job.
And Elizabeth speaks. We'll hear from Elizabeth Smart for the very first time today, Friday, October the 24th, 2003.
From NBC News, this is Today with Katie Couric and Matt Lauer. Live from Studio 1A in Rockefeller Plaza.
And welcome to Today on this TGIF morning. I'm happy about that. I'm Katie Couric.
And I'm Matt Lauer. Some differing opinions on this Kobe Bryant situation. Some people say he's obviously innocent until proven guilty. Every right to play basketball. Other people say while he's facing these sexual assault charges, he shouldn't be on the court.
But first, let's get the morning's top stories from Weekend Today's Lester Holt, who's filling in for Ann this morning while she's on assignment. Lester, good morning.
Katie and Matt, good morning to you. Good morning, everyone. More now on Kobe Bryant, back on the court last night in his first exhibition game since he was charged in court with sexual assault. It's the end of an era in aviation. This morning, a British Airways Concorde flies from New York to London and into history. And NBC's Robert Hager is on it.
We're aboard this elegant Concorde waiting for takeoff into the history books. Earlier at the gate, an invitation-only mix, celebrities, officials, frequent Concorde flyers, and working reporters.
Now to the important things. Already at check-in, we got our first souvenir, this little model of the Concorde, and we got our menus. Scottish smoked salmon with caviar to start, pancetta-wrapped fillet of beef, wild mushroom and truffle omelet. And for those who aren't working, 3 fine champagnes.
Concorde's chief pilot is flying today, Captain Mike Bannister.
There are 3 great lady loves in my life. My wife, Chris, our daughter, Amy, and Concorde.
When our plane arrived last night, it was the last commercial landing the other way, London to New York. Air France retired its Concordes earlier in May. What doomed this technological marvel? The $6,000 a ticket price, for one thing, and sky-high costs to operate. Then came the Air France crash, the 9/11 attacks, combined with the economic recession. Concordes were flying half empty. Now, carriers see the future in bigger, cheaper planes, not faster ones. So today's flight looks like the end of an era. After 27 years, the last commercial supersonic flight for generations. Robert Hager, NBC News, aboard the Concorde.
And as we get ready to end this half hour, we want to go to a live shot right now from John F. Kennedy International Airport. That is the Concorde, British Airways flight, last commercial flight of that supersonic jet, taxiing out on the runway, supposed to be wheels up at 7:35, but as the British would say, they are ahead of schedule.
That's right, and it is the final flight, the end of an era. The Concorde has been around for many years. The Virgin flight was when, Matt?
1977, something like that?
I think it was 1976, but I'll double check on that. And some of the dignitaries on board, Joan Collins, Sir David Frost. We saw Christy Brinkley earlier.
Right. It's going to fly at 1,300 plus miles an hour. And here's a fact for you, Katie. The airframe actually stretches between 6 and 10 inches during flight because of the heating caused by the speed it travels at.
Wow, 3.5-hour flight, actually less than 3.5 hours before it reaches London, England.
That's right, and once they get there, they're expecting something like 250,000 people at Heathrow Airport to greet the plane as she arrives. Can we say she?
Yes, we decided we were trying to figure out the plane's gender. I thought it was male, you thought it was female, but it is in fact a female.
We're going to have much more on the Concorde's last flight, but first, this is Today on NBC.
Come fly with me, let's fly away.
We're only a couple of minutes away from history in the making, the final commercial flight of the Concorde. We'll take off from New York's JFK International Airport, heading to London one last time. And it's getting an awful lot of attention. Meanwhile, back at 7:30 on this Friday morning, it's the 24th day of October 2003. Kind of a semi-frozen crowd standing by outside our studio windows this morning.
Popsicle toes, right?
Yeah, dipped into the 30s overnight here. Kind of a a harsh morning, but it should warm up a little bit for the weekend if you're heading into town. And coming up in this half hour, first of all, let me say I'm Matt Lauer along with Katie Couric.
Thank you for introducing us.
I just didn't want you to be sitting there with nothing to do.
Gazing at you adoringly, as usual.
It should be good flying weather for the Concorde today, which is always nice. It's taking off in just a couple of minutes. Also coming up in this half hour, Pamela Anderson. She's made millions of dollars as an international sex symbol, but now she is facing some serious health issues.
It's 7:36. Now here's Matt.
All right, Katie, thank you. We change gears now and go talk about the last commercial flight of the Concorde. Today's travel editor, Peter Greenberg, is at New York's JFK Airport. Peter, good morning to you.
Good morning, Matt.
So who's on the plane?
Well, it's an interesting mix of people, Matt. You've got everybody from Sir David Frost to Christy Brinkley. It's also sort of a flight of forgiveness when you think about it, because Joan Collins, who was actually banned a few years ago from all British Airways flights for some bad in-flight behavior, even she's on the flight. And of course, our lucky Concorde winners, David and Patty Hayes, they're on the flight as well.
Yeah, what kind of ceremonies took place before the people boarded the Concorde and then as the plane was pulled back from the gate?
Well, it was a rather emotional farewell. Captain Mike Bannister, who you met yesterday, gave a rather emotional speech. They then pushed back the plane and actually raised both the British and the American flags from the cockpit as it was pushed back. The New York City Fire Department, actually the Port Authority Fire Department, did a water display, a ceremonial farewell. You have to leave it to the British for the pomp and circumstance when they always celebrate a farewell, and this is indeed the passing of an era.
So what are they going to, you know, I've been to the Concorde terminal or reception area there at JFK. What are they going to do with that area now that the Concorde no longer flies out of it?
Well, officially they tell me they're going to convert it to more first-class lounge capacity, but they really don't have any specific plans about that yet, because remember, this is an airline that branded their entire airline around one particular plane, so what's going to happen now remains to be seen.
And what do you think is going to be happening on board the Concorde during the flight? Something special? I mean, a conga line down the center aisle, what?
Yep,
here
as
she
a matter
goes.
of fact, the
By the way,
Concorde is taking off right now.
Yeah, Peter, let's just sit and watch this because it is a moment of aviation history. Peter, and as she goes and takes off from Kennedy, I have to say that there are some people living in communities not far from that airport who are probably sipping champagne this morning, not unhappy that this is the last flight of the Concorde.
That is correct, Matt. As it rolls down runway 31 left behind me, you just saw it take off. They'll make a mandatory left turn over those people in Howard Beach and then out over the water, and in about 12 minutes he'll kick on the afterburners and then they'll go up to Mach 2.
Yeah, and if you've ever been under the Concorde and watched it come off a runway, it roars, and the people there have been complaining for years that it's shaken their houses, even set off car alarms every time it takes to the skies. So there's going to be some peace and quiet, relative peace and quiet for those people in the days and months to come. Peter, let me just ask you also, I mean, what is going to happen with the actual aircraft? 16 were built. How many are left and where are they going?
Well, British Airways only has 5 left. In fact, the plane that just took off now is their latest in the fleet. In fact, it actually set the speed record about 7 years ago from New York to London in 2 hours and 52 minutes. They're not going to set any speed records today because they're going to fly low and slow over London, over Windsor Castle, up the Thames, all around London. What's going to happen after that, all 5 planes are going to be parked in London at the airport, and then one by one they'll be decommissioned and go to museums around the world.
All right, Peter Greenberg, just pretty to watch. I don't care how many years she's been flying. It is pretty to watch that plane take off. And thanks for your coverage very much.
You got it, madam. Quite an emotional moment out here.
Yeah, it's
The
nice.
Concorde apparently travels faster than the sun, and when it goes supersonic, you've been on it. You really feel like you're on a spaceship in a way, don't you?
But you know, people always say, what does it feel like when it kicks into supersonic? You hear that little boom. It's kind of like a jolt, and then, you know, it doesn't feel any different after that, although you're flying a lot higher normally than a typical commercial airline up there.
And I felt like John Glenn.
Did you? You thought you were weightless there for a while, didn't you? Floating down the aisle.
Unfortunately, I never feel that way. Meanwhile, we have some funny stories. Harvey Weinstein, we're going to bust a couple of people. Chairman of Miramax was fined £200 in June of 1999 for lighting a cigarette in the bathroom. He said he got nervous because of turbulence. Diana Ross set off a metal detector and flew into a rage when a guard tried to search her by hand. She was arrested,
Right.
but later released without charges.
And I know
And
this is your
my
favorite
one. When Michael Jackson flew to Britain on Concorde last year, he reportedly purchased a separate seat for his Pinocchio-style puppet. Wasn't that nice of him?
It's a pricey puppet right there. All right, let's get a check of the weather. Janice Huff is out on the plaza in for Al this morning. Hey, Janice.
Hey, Matt. It's a super morning here in New York. It's a little chilly, but the skies are clear. Great weather for the Concorde to fly. And a nice, huge crowd out here for today's superstars. We have a birthday today. What's your name?
Jamisa Sonia.
Hey, where are you from, Jamisa?
I am from New Orleans, Louisiana.
Happy birthday to you. And then an 89-year-old lady here. Where are you from, ma'am?
Pennsylvania.
Good to have you here today. Let's check on the weather this morning. She didn't mind that I said she was.
Lester's got the headlines of the morning. He's in for Ann. Hi, Lester.
Matt, Katie, and Janice, hello again. Good morning, everyone. The supersonic Concorde is making its last commercial flight today. The London-bound British Airways jet took off from New York this morning on the Concorde's last flight across the Atlantic. After 27 years of service, the planes are being retired because they're too expensive to fly. Federal prosecutors have indicted the founder of the U.S. military's Muslim chaplain program for illegally dealing with Libya. Abdul Rahman Alamoudi is.
All right, also we're going to tell you how one man used pumpkins for an occasion even more special than Halloween. But first, Ann is on assignment. Let's swing over to the news desk. Say good morning again to Lester Holt. Hi, Lester.
Hi, Matt and Katie. Hello again, everyone. Today, the final flight for the Concorde. This morning, a British Airways Concorde headed to London and retirement after taking off from New York on its final supersonic journey. Among other things, the Concorde was plagued during its 27-year history by the high cost of operating it. More attacks against U.S. troops in Iraq. One soldier was killed this morning by small arms fire in Mosul. 13 others were wounded in a mortar attack near Baghdad.